Hello, everybody. This is RonUSMC, and welcome to Talking in Stations Midweek. If you haven't noticed, Artemis is doing non-spaceship stuff tonight, and I don't know what's up with that. We're going to have a talk with him about that. As always, Silver is going to be on from Fed Up.
Hey guys, super excited about today's show, really.
And, of course, I've already mixed it up. But so tonight's topic is faction warfare. And there's a couple of groups that have been, doing a lot of fighting and kind of on Reddit a lot. And we have both of those groups represented. So the Snowflake Coalition, right? And that's Tristan. And I don't think I can pronounce your last name. So say hi, Tristan.
Hi, it's Tristan daCuhna.
And we also have Harkon,
Hey.
from Ushra'Khan, from the Minmatar faction, right?
Yeah, Ushra'Khan.
Ushra'Khan, that's right. So we have both of those groups represented, and then we have some other topics that we're going to hit. So probably the last half of the show, we'll be talking about faction warfare and how awesome it is. And so very exciting. So you guys ready to dive right in?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Right on, man. So, this past week is really interesting, right? Because the monthly economic report was released. And if you guys don't know what the MER is, the monthly economic report gives us the back end numbers of what really people, have mined and, what kind of ISK sinks and faucets. And it's really, I don't know, I've always thought it was kind of strange, right, to get the actual numbers. But, we always kind of joke, right, between like the different nullsec, between like Imperium and Test and, who's number one and who's number two on, this. But the most interesting things that I've found was, because the Imperium was deployed for the Northern War, they weren't the number one mining, right? That was the biggest shock. Well, I mean, it wasn't quite a shock, but it was a nice little small victory, right? And the second thing was the most destroyed. And I know that the most destroyed includes not only things that were destroyed, but also it could be things that were moved or, whatever. So it can include a lot of different things, but that was Dreddit, right? And that was the most destroyed in game. And I thought that was interesting because, the Southern War that I always joke about is not, is kind of underreported, but interesting. So I thought that was super interesting. Silver, what did you think about the MER? Did you even bother to look at it?
Yeah, I tended to glance over it. I don't typically give it too much weight because there's a lot of things that go on, and a lot of it is just numbers. But a couple of things that I saw, the Imperium numbers are interesting because it really is a testament to how much participation they get in their war effort, I thought. People made the trip and deployed is what I read from that, which is pretty interesting. And the Dreddit numbers, I think you're right. I think the war is underreported because we're not having the glamour stuff, right? There's no 100 on 100 Titan fights typically, but there's a lot going on. It's just a constant burn, right? It is constantly going, all time zones. There are skirmishes breaking out all the time, but it's mostly subcap and sort of, not very big. You don't get a huge battle report out of it, but there are a lot of stuff dying in Dreddit.
Yeah, I agree, right? It's not very glamorous, right? It's not dropping supers and, having the big doomsdays and that kind of thing. So it's just kind of like this slow, burn. Tristan, do you guys, get much from the MER or use it for anything or?
No, we don't even look at it.
Okay, so I'm going to take that as a maybe. Harkon, do you guys even bother with it?
Not very often. And if we only just look at what was destroyed in our region. which isn't
Oh, right.
too small, I guess. Metropolis has like 1,000 billion, if I see that correctly. So yeah, that's everything that's important for us there, basically. Look what was blown up.
Yeah, and that's always
Oh, right
interesting, right? You can kind of get a heat map of what's going on. And I'm always, as a smaller alliance guy, I'm always looking at the underrepresented regions just to see what's going on over there.
Yeah, sure, it's good for that.
Yeah, that's kind of, for us, it's really, how hard that we've been working, right, as empire building kind of thing. It's, we, everyone's out mining all the time, and it's, it's nice to just be able to refer to those numbers, but should we even have those numbers? I think that's a separate question, right?
I don't know. It's I think it's kind of nice because it gives you a sort of snapshot, without reading in too deep. You sort of get a snapshot of where the hotbed of stuff is going on, who's making moves, who's sort of waning, who's maybe moved over to a different region and stuff. You can glean some useful things from it, other than I mine the most rocks. Well, that's good, but if you look down the chart a little bit, you can glean some information.
Yeah, and it's a lot of bragging rights too, right? Like it
is.
Oh, look at the MER, look at the MER.
And some of it's legit. Like Tess has been doing a really good job of building an esoteria. I say that, trying to be not biased, but it's true. You guys have been doing good, and that influence is spread out across Legacy too. So
yeah, it's been a really long road on that.
yeah.
So I guess the next topic, right? But just as big. I mean, what are your opinions? So Silver, what do you think about Blackout and how that's affected your gameplay? I remember last week when we talked, one of the things that you were kind of stressing about was that you were like a couple of jumps, right, from Winterco. And I mean, I can tell you right now that I don't know where Loki babies come from, but they're having a party because there are Lokis everywhere. You can't swing a Merlin without hitting 4 Lokis, cloaked up. So, any differences since the last week?
No, I'm still concerned for the smaller groups like myself and others. We're struggling to get the old job done. It hurts us quite a bit. I struggle to make my guys feel safe. A couple of my guys have said, I've lost what I sort of like to do in the game. I log in at like 3 a.m. and no one's really on. That's when I like to rat, and no one's there to defend me at that time. Well, that being said, the first couple days are rough, but we're starting to hit a rhythm now. We've lost some people. Some people have gone to wormholes. Some people have gone to high sec. Some of them are trying to wait it out and see if it's temporary. But we're starting to learn to rat in groups, use different ships, talk to each other. Our standing fleet has actually grown quite a bit over the last few days. So, in my opinion, I'm starting to feel very good about the change. It takes some pain to heal sometimes, and it's going to shove the meta in the right direction at the very least, in my opinion. And I think it's going to be okay. We're already starting to forget that there was local, to be honest. It makes you more aware. It makes people be at their keyboard, and that's very good for the game, I think.
Yeah, I feel the same in the sense that I really like the added danger. I think that's fun. Um, and 2 sort of things have kind of popped up that have really died right in the past 4 or 5 years, and that's gate camps. Gate camps are a regular thing now, and they're kind of fun. They're kind of like a bonding experience, and they're get new bros out, and so gate camps are back. And the second thing is, it used to be kind of big, but it just died off into this sort of rare thing, which is bait ships. And it's funny, like if I look at my hangar now, I have like 4 bait ships, and I've already lost like 5 of them, and setting up these elaborate traps. It's just hilarious that you spend a lot of time with gate camps, with bait ships, and setting up, and it's a. I really like everything out at the subcap level and below. I like, and I wouldn't want to change anything. My only real changes would be something around like the cap and super cap level, right? Like, being able to, get a single, interceptor in, and then being able to sino in 300 dreads is a big deal. So, but everything subcap and below and small gang below, I think it's awesome, right?
Yeah, it's a typical symptom. Sorry, who's going to speak?
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say that's typical with most changes, right? Eve is such a wide breadth that a change works well at certain levels and then starts to break at the macro level or down. I think Fozzisav is a lot like that. I think it works really great for a group my size. Not so great when you look at a big macro level like a test versus fraternity fight. But I think in general it's very healthy. I'm interested to hear a little bit from the low sec guys on if you got any thoughts of it. Have you come out to Nullsec to try and pick on us poor null boys that are adjusted to the new fear, or what do you guys think of this whole thing?
Tristan?
Yeah, if I could step in, we've actually kind of seen the opposite. Obviously, like a lot of low-sec guys have been going out roaming null, which they may not have done as much previously. But we've actually got a new entity in our area comprised of guys which are ex-Nullsec corps. So two corps from Initiative have formed a new kind of low-sec alliance called Project Gunga, and they've been making a lot of kind of waves in the area, hitting structures, causing fights, and it's kind of good to see those guys maybe coming over to low-sec to try out the waters here. And I don't know if it's just a case of timing or if maybe Blackout has kind of caused them to reevaluate what they're going to do.
Yeah, we also had an increase in recruits from Nullsec, at least from what I can tell. And at least our group has been out in Nullsec for a few roams now. I mean, we have a special relationship to Providence and CVA anyway, so it basically helped us motivate people to go into Provi and raid CVA. But I have to say the results are pretty mixed. I mean, the first few times we had a lot of fun, but lately it's been less successful. The reaction time and the kind of reaction has improved, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because that's what I'm seeing too. I'm seeing that that Nullsec is adapting way faster than I thought. Like even in my own group, first it was doom and gloom. Oh my God, how am I going to get this done? Now I'm looking at my guys in a 50-man standing fleet, and they're out in remote rep dummies, and there's a standing fleet ready to respond, and that's not something we've had before. So I think to me, kudos to CCP to throw a big rock in the puddle and just make some waves. Some people are going to be mad, some people are going to be good, but I love to hear that now there's new groups in LowSec and they're stirring things up. Like the ripples are going outwards. To me, it's very positive. I know that there's mixed reports around and people still mad about it. It's not perfect. It has its problems, but it's definitely shifted people in the way that they play.
And it's also so nice, to see, and it's probably even some of your guys, right? These like random groups that I've never even heard of, right? And you can kind of keep your ear to the train tracks for years, and you've heard of all the groups and all the players and all this and that, and then it's like some random 200-man group that you've never even heard of, right? I really like that, and I really like that like 20 or 25 or whatever 40 or 50-man group can move around quickly without us knowing exactly where they are, right? Like, because if local was there, we would see 20 neutrals, right, in our space. But now we see one, two, and next thing you know, there's 15 there, and it's super interesting, and I think it's added a lot of spice into Sov, right, where cloaky Lokis are just popping up everywhere.
Yeah, the cloaky meta is there for sure. But as you said, I think people are starting to learn to deal with it. What I like most about it is the whole fog of war thing. open up other gameplays for like hit and run tactics, right? Like, for example, if you go into Detroit on the weekend and you start messing around and you hang around too long, they're very good at like trapping you there. But now you can like dip through a wormhole, you can skirt to a different gate without them seeing you, or you can spike out. So there's more gameplay open there too. Like just the other day, we had a tail on us, and we dipped through a wormhole to evade the tail. So I love that stuff. It's good gameplay.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with it. I think it's super interesting. All right, so our last kind of topic before we go into faction warfare is something that you and I are in. The Southern War, and I don't think it has a name yet, but the Southern War continues. We we didn't really have a big fight today, but it was over the Boz iHub. It's a very important fight, or a very important iHub. We held that. And then we had a fight yesterday over Fortizar. Legacy lost the Fortizar. Massive, massive fight. I think it was 1,000 or 1,100 or 1,000 on one side and like 900 on the other. It was just massive. But it wasn't as spectacular of a fight as you would imagine, right? With those kind of numbers, because when you think about the amount of time that people invest in something like that, right? You're talking, probably 500 or 600 real people that have spent 3 to 4 hours minimum, right? Getting ready and ships and all this and that, and then going to this huge, massive fight, and then it lasts, 20 or 30 minutes, and then it's over. And, and this isn't, I'm not saying anything bad about either side, right? Because if the objective is won, you don't have to fight. and especially like, you don't need to bleed ships if you don't need to, right? So cheers to them because they won. And then earlier, I think it was, earlier this week, we had a couple more Fortizar timers that were interesting around the Wicked Creek, kind of Scalding Pass area, taking iHubs there. But, just really, really great fights, right? Like Winterco is always there. They've tried a couple of new doctrines and having some fun with it. So, I've been, getting involved with it. I can't really talk about a war without saying that Sino-jammers are the devil, right? I mean, I don't know if they're the devil, like the literal devil.
No, they're the
but like they're the
devil.
devil's brother. They're the devil's brother.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Silver? How I know that a lot of the fights have been EU, right? So I know that you haven't been able to get on some of the early ones, but some of the later ones you've been in, right?
Yeah, I always have eyes on my guys and what's going on in EU too. I wish I could participate more. It has been a lot of EU action, but both sides are so even in numbers most of the time, and that's good to see. They won the objective. Legacy sort of won a little bit the ISK war, but it was just a good fight. It was a good fight, and that's good to see. Like. And then that's been my impression, even in the U.S. time zone. You go over there and it's a good fight. Both of them, both sides. And that's why you see so many ships dead, because it's just every time zone. There's something going on all the time. Somebody's fighting, somebody's skirmishing, someone's gate camping. It's really truly the reason why you're not seeing big shifts in the move is because of that damn Sino-jammer wall, man. I mean, for people who don't really understand it, it's not just that we can't use capitals as easily, and Ron's gone over this a couple times in his stream, but when you get into a fight behind enemy lines and you can't Titan bridge in reinforcements, that's a huge defender's advantage, because they can take an Ansiblex gate from their staging and be right back on grid faster than we can even try and reship. So the defender's advantage is pretty huge. That's not taking away from Fraternity's efforts. They've been fighting very well, but that's why you're not seeing huge shifts. It works the other way too. They can't push us very hard because we'll do the same thing.
I think the counterplay, right, would be us gating our supers, right? So we should just start like 5 hours early and just slowly gate. We'll lose like 25% to attrition. We'll have to take the day off work, but hey, we'll get that iHub, right? So so it's been a lot of fun. It's been super interesting. One of the things that I think is note is that the number, on each side is going up, right? So like 3 weeks ago, it was, maybe 450 versus 500, 550. But now it's, 900, 1,000, 1,100. And the reason is, the goons have pulled back, right? So really, this war down here, the Southern War, is the only real big war that's going on right now. So, if you look at a battle report, it's like, the all stars, right? So you see Pandemic Horde, Northern Coalition, Pandemic Legion, and then on our side, you'll see Legacy, you'll see Imperium, you might even see Init, so it's kind of like, the North versus the South again, right? And if you want to be in a really huge, massive tie-dye battle, which I love, these are my favorite, then, that's the place to go.
For sure. We actually had a big low-sec fight with Snuff the other day, too. They had a wormhole directly into Legacy space, and we sort of formed and said, fuck it, and jumped through the hole and fought them in low-sec, so that was cool, too.
Speaking of low-sec, so let us get into why we dragged these two guys. So I know, I don't, so if you take nothing, right, and you add just a little pinch, so that's what I know about faction warfare. I tried it for like 30 days and everyone just warped off and I thought it wasn't great. But, the other kind of interesting thing I think about, faction warfare is when you kind of get into the RP element, right? You kind of get into the, choose your own adventure kind of style of, being able to create your own story and, you have these kind of big battles. But what, kind of drew us to, the story of your two factions fighting, we're just seeing all these battle reports, right? And hearing all these stories. So if one of you two would love to kind of give us a primer on, get us up to speed a little bit on kind of why are you guys fighting? How long have you been? That kind of thing.
Yeah, but before you start, I just wanted to say, like, these two guys are groups that my group have fought against and with for years before. So I'm really excited to see them back in the limelight and battle reports coming out. And I'm happy to hear you guys and your names. And it should be said that both of your organizations are pretty storied. I think Ushra'Khan is claiming the oldest alliance in the game, definitely the oldest alliance in faction warfare, right? So it's really good to see you guys around and kicking it off. So tell me, what's been going on? Because I miss it.
Ladies first.
No, I'll let you go first, mate.
Okay, so then I'm gonna try to start, I guess. So what's been going on? Well, over the last 5 years that I have been part of faction warfare, we have seen a lot of ups and downs in faction warfare, and in general, I would say that it is in decline. That can't be denied. But recently, we have seen at least some light at the end of the tunnel with the return of Localist Primary and some other Amarrian groups. At the same time, Smile and Wave, a Russian Minmatar group, came back from Galanti space a while ago. And so both sides are getting more numbers. And well, recently we tried to initiate some fighting in Aetiangard, and that went slightly wrong, I guess. And that is where all those battle reports come from. So basically, sorry, you wanted to ask?
No, so, yeah, I was going to ask you. So, what was the goal there? Like, what kicked that all off? Are you guys fighting over system control, or is it some other objective? Like what was it that got you going there?
So the problem, or one of the main problems, at least I see with faction warfare right now, is that taking systems, depending on the tier level, is very difficult. So Minmatar, for example, is right now in a very low tier. Amarr is in a very high tier. So us pushing systems isn't worth it, in my opinion. There might be other people thinking other things than that. But so we are basically on the defense, actually. Oh, sorry. But the Amarr weren't attacking our home systems for some reasons. And so we thought after a few weeks, maybe we just try to attack their home system, which is Aetiangard. So we try to deploy Citadel over there. And as we wanted to create some content, we weren't very sneaky about it. We just put it down, and while we anchored it, we attacked one of their citadels to distract them, at least for the initial anchoring. And then we came back for the anchoring timer, the timer when it would go up properly. And that is when the first big engagement started. Tristan, maybe you want to put your perspective until that point?
Yeah. So we kind of had a feeling that something was going down when Harkon asked us very kindly on Discord which system we would fight them over. So we suggested that they try
I asked for a friend. Okay, that wasn't.
I love that, but go ahead.
And so we get a structure notification ping that one of our citadels is being shot by Ushra'Khan. Have a nice little fight over that, and the sneaky boys drop a Astra house in the system while we're looking the other way. And that kind of evolved everything from there, really. They were trying to get their initial staging point in place. We really didn't want that. And expecting it to be quite a big fight, we called some friends, and well, the rest is on that battle report there. Do you guys want to buy some dreads, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, I see some supers and dreads on that kill mail. Like, who are the friends that you would call? Like, who else is in on this?
So I called my fellow drinking enthusiasts in top tier, who we got very drunk with in Nottingham a few months ago, and they very kindly provided some nixes for us to rinse some dreads with.
That's awesome. So you met these guys at an Eve meet?
Yeah, we met at Event T, the live stream of the Alliance tournament final last year.
You see, I love that about Eve. Like you go to an Eve meet, you talk to some guys, you have a few drinks, you hit it off, you talk Eve, and then a fight comes up and you call those guys. That's great.
Yeah, it's really useful kind of meeting people at these meets. We actually did our own one in April this year in Lincoln, UK, and had a really nice attendance for that as well. So, guys, go out and get drunk with people.
Yeah, for sure.
So when
no, go ahead.
I know that faction warfare is, I think it's a little like it's a higher skill level, but it's lower in numbers. Because most of the faction warfare pilots that I've encountered usually pretty high skill level. Especially in like the smaller ships, right? Not great capital pilots, but excellent at subcap. So, when you were talking about like a big fight, give me an idea of like some of the doctrines you're using and about how many people is it on each side.
So for that 8 guard fight, for the initial Citadel fight, we had called in Smile and Wave, the other bigger Minmatar faction warfare group, and we had some other militia members in our fleet, and we were fielding Typhoons. We tried to stick with Minmatar, being Minmatar militia, and Ushra'Khan being, I won't say an RP alliance, but we at least pretend to RP from time to time. So we stuck with Typhoons, cruise missile Typhoons, to be exact. And we had, I would say, maybe 50 people. But I have to add, being militia means that if you have 50 people in fleet, you can have around 30 or something in doctrine ships, and the rest is gone all over the place. And as for this fight, some people wanted to drop caps. There was even less in doctrine ships. And yeah, we didn't really expect supers.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
Being involved in a lot of faction warfare fights in my lifetime, supers are pretty rare, and there's reasons for that. It's mostly low sec mechanics. I kind of keep the ceiling down a little bit in low sec, but yeah, a couple of nixes out there, and that can change the game.
So from the like from the Amarr side, we obviously went with an Amarr theme because that it goes from our Plex doctrines, which are also Amarr. Guys training to basic things like punishers, then coercers, then cruisers, then up to battleships. So you kind of follow a logical progression there. So we went at them with Armageddons, which were laser-based, a few cat pilots of our own, a lot of guys multi-boxing, and then the guys from top tier kind of supporting just in case.
I have to say that the Nixes weren't the issue, really. I mean, we had lost before the Nixes dropped on grid, at least from my perspective. We had too few logis with us because too many people wanted to fly caps, and then when the caps dropped, they dropped into the wrong position. So yeah, we had basically fucked up before the Nixes came, but the Nixes were basically then the total knockout for us.
Gotcha,
You need to get those guys in faxes, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, now
that's funny because the struggle with when we were in faction warfare too is cap pilot versus sub cap pilot, because in Lowsec you sort of winning the sub cap fight is crucial to winning the fight, right? Like you said, the Nix probably was icing on the cake, but you'd already lost the sub caps, so you got to walk this line of, well, I have to win the sub cap fight and caps could push us over the edge, but your pilots are limited. So like, how do you balance that out when everybody's like, yeah, I want to drop my carrier, and you're like, but I have 3 guardians, I need 10.
Well, I think we had 6 in total, but yeah, that was an issue. Now the problem is those Nixes kind of scared people so now we are having problems to get people in caps now. Because every time we drop caps, people expect 2 Nixes to show up, or maybe more. So, yeah, it's but I mean that wasn't the end of the whole tale, right? I mean we can move on from that fight. That was just one in the whole story. And I want to add one thing because Matthew brought it up. Matthew Dust was one of the people that actually initiated this push for 8 Young Art. Just to be fair to him, because yeah.
That's good. All right, so talk to me about the next chapter. What happens from here? What's been going on since then?
So, next thing after this little debacle was that we were thinking about putting a citadel in another system to push another system that might not be as protected as 8 Young Art was. And before I really knew what was going on, the Smile and Wave group had put another citadel up in 8 Young Art. And that came out again, and so we formed again. But this time, Tristan, you had some more help, even.
So this time, we'd formed quite a lot just from a Mars point of view. So we had Snowflake members, which is Localist Primary, Yondu Federation, 44th Recon, and we'd also got our former CEO, which was Mikul, who's now part of Templis Calcef, had arranged for Templis Calcef to come and support us as well.
Good old Templis got involved. I love it.
So we'd got quite a substantial amount of guys on grid just from the Amarr side, Templis waiting next door, and Minmatar decided, no, we're just going to take the loss of the Citadel, and went home.
Well, to be fair, your Templis guys weren't very sneaky about waiting next door. So we had scouted them, or better, the Smile and Wave guys had scouted them, and they actually, Smile and Wave asked Ushra'Khan to fly anti-Griffin, anti-tackle, because in the first engagement, people weren't very happy with the amount of Griffins that were thrown at us. So we had actually shown up in rail harpies with some Scalpel support to chase Griffins off the field, and then the Russians told us to fly home. And that is what we did.
By Russians, you mean Smile and Wave?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, they are Russian-speaking corp, mostly, as far as I know.
I love those guys. We worked well together in the past.
Yeah, they are really good.
It's interesting, that Amarr, kind of brings in this outside help. Is that sort of frowned upon? What if, like, Minmatar hired a nullsec entity to come in kind of thing. Like, is that, I don't know, is that just like, just try to keep it under control, or is it just like a one-off situation, or how does that work?
I think if it's a situation where it's like your main staging that's under attack, you'd use any means at your disposal to protect. And I think that would go for any entity, either faction warfare or nullsec or anything like that.
Yeah,
man.
I would agree to a degree there. But outside of that, I mean, I would lie if I said that we weren't a bit salty about the amount of people they called in just for that little citadel.
Nah, staging Citadel in your home system though is a pretty big threat.
Well,
but everyone gets salty about that. Like, if it's 900 versus 910, the people who have 910 are dirty blobbers.
Yeah. So I don't hear you guys talking much. You mentioned it that taking systems really isn't worth it from a strategic standpoint, and I probably would agree. But it is still a catalyst for fighting, is it not? So, is there no interest in pushing system control? Is any of that happening at all in Plex fighting?
I think the idea of Ushra putting citadels in Isengard was to try and actually flip the system over to Minmatar control, which would have been quite a demoralizing thing for Amarr. But obviously, seeing that as being the intent, we decided to go with everything we had. Because guys have been quite hungry for fights for a while now. So when something like this lands on your lap, you're absolutely going to go for it.
Well, to be fair, I mean, I would lie if I said that taking Isengard wouldn't have been fun, but that wasn't the motivation behind the whole thing. The main motivation, at least from my perspective, was that the whole pushing systems and getting fights for it isn't happening much right now. As I said, the Amarr haven't decided to push the home systems that we hold right now. We own like 12 systems at this point, and like a few of them are close to zero, close to stable, and the rest is pretty high. But there isn't a concern or a concentrated push or effort that we can see. So, and I understand that totally, that they can't be bothered. But the idea was to threaten the system to then get more people into the plexes and get plex fights, because that is what faction warfare, at least for me, ultimately is. It's the fights within the plexes with doctrines that are suited for those plexes, which makes faction warfare very special. And therefore, I mean, it is faction warfare if we shoot at each other, I guess, but I wouldn't really call the engagements that we had what faction warfare is, if that made that somewhat understandable.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm getting at, because one thing I loved about faction warfare is that the plexes offer sort of terrain to the map, right? There's terrain to faction warfare map. You can't take your tank over that rock hill, right? You can only send infantry over that rock hill, that kind of thing. You can't use your big cannons here because I love the terrain aspect. And then there's the strategy of countering each other all the time, and like that leads to a lot of unique fighting. But I understand the motivation of it could be tough to get across to your pilots. Like you're going to go and spin around in plexes, and if it's not contested, that's one place where you can use boredom as an extreme weapon, right? Like just don't contest, and it still takes you like 2 days to flip a system, right? So is that what it is? It's just hard to motivate people to even do it, even though the fighting would be pretty exciting?
I think at present there's kind of an underlying issue with faction warfare that there isn't really a proper victory condition there anymore. All four factions have now won their one-off medals, and so you don't really get the motivation to go, hammer and tongs and to try and take an entire warzone control now. You can deny the enemy their mission systems, and that's really it. You can probably set up, as Harkon was trying to do, for a home system siege. But again, without that proper victory condition, what's the point when you can just take every other system, get your tier up, and make some money from it?
I'm not sure if that's if I would agree to that point. I mean that's not my point of view. Let's put it that way. It's a total legit point, and I know a lot of people that see it the same way. I mean, I for myself have suggested that there has to be some kind of reward for taking the warzone. Well, like, for example, put something into the LP store for 2 weeks after faction took the warzone, like faction destroyers or whatever, something small. So as for taking systems, I mean, we would take systems, but right now, as you have described it, it's basically us grinding 2 days, 3 days against people that are in off time zone that are getting a lot of LP for what they are doing, deplexing, because they're in a high tier. So it's way easier to wait for the swing to happen when basically their LP gets less value, then the farmers switch sides, and then they come to our side and plex up systems without us doing much. So without the proper Minmatar groups doing much. And proper, I mean the PvP focused ones. Proper is maybe not the right word.
What
Yeah.
is your relationship with like the farmers or like the kind of I guess the PvPers that like I see streaming or that kind of thing? Do they interact with you guys at all? Do you guys just fight them as you would like any other sort of faction, or you guys just kind of wait for them to do their thing? Or
Well, farmers tend to be alts of PvPers, right?
Say from my experience, farmers tend to be alts of non-faction warfare entities.
Yeah. So let's talk about the mechanic a little bit, because herein lies like one of the core flaws of faction warfare is that you're actually punished for holding control of your zone for too long, right? Because how it works is, as you're taking the war zone and you're accumulating more systems, you're getting paid in LP, right? Because you have less, and as you take more, the LP value sort of goes down, and then your LP market floods out after a while because everyone's running missions and everyone's getting paid nicely at that high tier. If you take the whole war zone, you're getting paid higher, and then market supply and demand happens, and suddenly your LP starts to drop in value, and the other side goes up because their factions LP items, like that's where you get Vexor Navy issues from, that's where you get your Armageddon Navy issues from, is from the faction LP, right? So you get this market influence on a military war zone, right? So you're actually punished for that. And then farmers will come in after, like, say, Amarr takes the war zone for a few months. The Minmatar LP items will go up in value, and the farmers will switch sides and start fighting for that side and get paid because that value has gone up. So it doesn't pay to constantly pressure the other side and hold your war zone, right? You guys feel that way? Like that pendulum market pressure is really what's the drag on the PvP motivation to keep your war zone?
So yes, it is. I mean, I wouldn't say it feels like you're not rewarded, because at least from my point of view, I don't do faction warfare to get ISK. So the reward part is kind of secondary, at least when it comes to the LP. I would like some kind of goal to go for, like we had with a medal, because that really motivates people. But you are correct that the whole market influence on faction warfare and on the situation of the war zone is taking its toll, and it's annoying. And if it comes to the farmers, I mean, like Tristan said, it's mostly alts of some people wherever they live. They switch sides, or they have an alt for each militia, depending on which one is in the high tier right now. If you are an opposite to the farmer, then you try to shoot them. Back in the days, you had multiple scrams when they could still use their warp core steps. Nowadays, it's more the ventures, or was the ventures, but that's about to be changed as far as I got it. So you basically hunt them, and they run. As soon as they enter the Plex or even the system, the farmers usually make their way out. So it's annoying because you just chase them off just for them not to run the Plex, so that you don't have to deplex it, or they deplex whatever you just did.
Right, so it sort of becomes monotonous for your line members, right? Like I was always like you. Like I'd like to just attack systems just because I like to win. I don't really care about the LP myself either. But when you're trying to press the war zone, and then you have an organization that can't cover all time zones, so you go to bed, you've made your progress for the night, you wake up and the whole system's deplex because the farmers did it. And it kind of is pretty demoralizing. and hard to keep going. And then what else I wanted to ask you guys about was, we did the whole warp core stab change, which had this side effect of you can't slide gates anymore, right? There's slight pause now when you go to a Plex and you try to slide the acceleration gate. You used to be able to come out of warp, mash the slide button, and you just get right into warp like instantly. Now there's that pause, that check, and that affected my ability to hunt the farmers, because I used to get a hyperspatial slasher that's triple scrammed and like slide the gate and be on top of their face before they could warp out. But now you can't even do that. So what do you think about that change? Did that help or what?
I think the thing with gate sliding, that coincided with the updates to the check for stabs when you enter a Plex gate.
Yeah.
It enabled like some really good fights to happen inside Plexes. You would have cruiser fleets going at it, neutral guys on the outside trying to tackle stuff. You'd always get the new pilots who couldn't figure out that you just mash that button and you go in and you're going to be fine. From a like, now it's changed. A lot of groups have adapted to that. You have your own tackle outside, you have your own cloaky Lokis or whatever you want to do there. So yeah, it was a big change when it first happened, but it's something I think a lot of guys now have got used to, and there's counterplays around that. The issue is that I think the whole stab check shouldn't even be on the gate, it should be on the timer, because there's absolutely nothing stopping you sitting in a large, in a stabbed VNI and running that anyway.
I have to say the stop on the gate was an issue at the start when it was introduced, because the pirates, the local pirates, just were all over the place on the gates. Usually, as Tristan said, you would just warp your fleet to the gate, punch that button, and you will have 99% of the fleet in the Plex, and the fight would go on. Now people get caught on the gate in the dozens, and especially the not so experienced pilots. So that was an issue, but I think people adapt. People are more careful now. I mean, it happens still, but that's just the way it is. It's not nothing I would complain too much about. But in all sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to ask you if you felt it improved. Was it an improvement to the way things were?
Yeah, it improved in the sense of that. I mean, it could be really annoying to hunt the same farmers out of the same plexes over and over again with step chips. But now they used ventures for the last weeks, months, I guess. And that's not really an improvement, at least for the defensive plex. Obviously, for offensive plexing, the venture has its limits because you have to be able to kill certain rats. But now it's ventures and ventures and ventures. And as far as I got it, that's going to be changing soon. So good. But the farmers will find another way. And it's going to be just cheap chips that warp fast. And, well, the underlying problem isn't solved. It's more the symptoms that are cured.
Yeah.
Talking about like people kind of warping off, like, so when I tried faction warfare, that's what I encountered, right? Which was every time I would go into a Plex, they would just warp off. And when they wouldn't warp off, they would have like 3 friends like pop up, behind us or whatever. So what do you think? Have you guys run Abyssals? And what do you guys think about that, that kind of mechanic where you spawn, this portal or whatever, and then you go into a room and it's, 2 ships enter, 1 ship leaves kind of thing, and you have a time limit. Have you guys tried that? And what do you guys think about that mechanic?
I haven't tried it.
I would not want to see that in faction warfare. It'd be terrible.
I mean, you can do solo in faction warfare. There's plenty of people that do that. I mean, we have Blight in our ranks in Ushra'Khan. He has a Twitch channel himself, and he's streaming his solo attempts, and he's very successful, at least from what I'm not very good at solo or any PvP for that matter. But so I try every now and then. You can find those fights. You just have to be patient. And if you try it long enough, you get a feeling and you know names. So if you see in local, there's this person, this is one is a solo PvPer, I can surely find a fight here. And if you see Harkon in local, you're like, okay, there's like 5 people waiting around the corner, so I better don't engage them 1v1.
Yeah, the thing about faction warfare is the whole game, when you're trying to get a fight, is this dance that you have to do, right? You have to look engageable but be able to win. In faction warfare, that's even more of an art, right? Because you can sit in a Plex and you have full control over whether you take that fight that's outside that Excel gate or you don't, right? So as a solo pilot, you kind of want to fly a ship that somebody's going to be like, an Atron? I can certainly beat that in my Firetail, right? And then a properly flown Atron could beat that Firetail, and that's how you get the fight. You appear engageable, and then you get to fight and win. And the same goes for doctrines and fleets too, right? Like you want to be sitting in a medium Plex, you want to fight. You maybe don't want to be sitting in there and 10, 15 Gilas, maybe you want to do MOAs. And then somebody's like, well, MOAs kind of suck. I can beat a MOA fleet. Right? You guys feel like that? Like if you're getting the fight, you got to do that dance, right?
Oh, yeah, we had that.
Sorry, go on. There you go on.
No, you.
Okay, geez. So we went through a stage of, setting plexes with bait punishers, and you'd get people come in, they'd see, oh, look, it's a punisher, I'm going to tackle that. And then you guys all jump in and just rinse it. And that proved to be great fun for a long time. And then now, obviously, everyone knows the meme that the punisher is always bait.
Yeah, I would never slide in on a punisher ever. Not worth.
So you kind of adapt that, but there are so many kind of plays and counter plays where you can set things up in plexes that you wouldn't be able to set up, I think, in other situations outside of a faction warfare arena. So having something like, like one person enters and another person enters and then that's it, it closes the Plex off like an abyssal kind of PvP would ruin all those plays and counters.
And I mean, we had this little dance in Bossburger the other night, where the Amarr showed up in, what was it, Ogora Navy, and some other cruisers, and we were in smaller stuff, so we went home to reship properly for them, and we were having a hard time figuring out what we could bring to get an engagement without chasing them off, because if we brought Logi, then they would most likely leave because they didn't have Logi. If we brought T2 stuff, they would run. So we, in the end, came back in T1 cruisers with Moas and Ruptures and had a really fun engagement.
Yeah, it's great. I always loved that dance about faction warfare. You see a group and you got to put your heads together and be like, all right, how am I going to get this fight where they won't run away but still be able to win? I loved that strategy.
And I mean, it's even more fun if it's a proper siege, or at least people are invested in the system that they fight over, because then you can't go like, I don't want to fight this because I don't need this Plex. I'll just leave and find something else to fight. That is what, for example, like, what was it, 2 years ago? Sutonia and the gang started pushing Dahl with treasures and just wanted to take the system because it was a mission running hub, and we defended it because it was one jump away from our home staging, and that was like 1.5 months of pure slaughter in Dahl. That was over every Plex basically when EU time zone hit. That was a lot of fun, and that was the last time that I saw proper Plex warfare.
Yeah, my last Plex warfare like that was probably about a year ago now on the Galmil side. No ICX versus Templars and those guys, and those are the sieges that I lived for. Like those are the kind of situations that is the closest to queue up and fight that Eve is ever going to get. Right? You seed literally thousands of ships. You go into an novice Plex, you beat the shit out of each other, and you have no ships left. You go reship, you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again until someone wins. Right? That's the stuff that I loved.
There used to be a lot of meaning to system sieges as well, because you had the whole mechanic of you lose your system, you're locked out from the station, you can't access any of your stuff. And then the introduction of citadels completely negated that issue. So since then, there's been a lot less, kind of proper staging sieges. Things like Burn Huola campaigns, which made kind of headlines a while ago, a few years ago, that just don't happen anymore because, what's the point? Move all my stuff into a citadel, lose the system, great, I've still got access to everything I had.
That was 5 years ago, by the way. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, but
you're right.
I mean that was the idea of the whole ATN guard thing. And I mean, I flew the fucking freighter for like 25 jumps with all the holes ready. Flew that thing up.
So you guys are talking about farming, and that, how much, looking at the map, and you see kind of Minmatars are kind of smaller right now, so they're getting paid more for less work. So, like, how much ISK or LP, I guess, does like an average line member make?
I'm not the expert on that one. Tristan.
I mean, in terms of plexing, which isn't really where the farming happens, the farming's all around missions. And you take Amarr, for example, right now, a level 4 mission at tier 5, you're getting about 110,000 LP. LP equates to about 1,000 ISK per LP. So, you can do the math around that.
Yeah, that's
About
pretty
100 million.
conservative. Yeah, and you could do those. You could blitz those, right? And that's pretty conservative. If you're more patient and you're a good market guy, you can get upwards to 1,500 ISK per LP. So it's really fantastic money, actually. And then what most people do as farmers, and then I did it, and I know a lot of people did, is you do both, right? You run the missions, but you also get a bunch of alts and you cast them out into the systems, and you just Oplex. And you can offensive plex everything up to medium plexes in a blaster comet, which is not really hard to get an alt skilled into. So, you run 6 clients or so over here plexing, and then I'm blitzing missions on another character, and it's a lot of ISK.
I think most people wouldn't even waste the money on a comet. They'd just use a catalyst and do small, medium, large.
Yep, can do that as well. Absolutely. But I only picked Comet because I wanted to do the novices too, because they were quick to knock out.
Just to clear up maybe some confusion here. So right now, Minmatar aren't getting more for less work. It's just that the Amarr are getting so much LP due to the tier system where they get a bonus on their LP that their LP lose value because it's just so much of it. While Minmatar LP aren't paid out at the moment in those numbers, so our LP gain in value, while we get less of it because of the tier system.
Right. So that pendulum switches back and forth, and a good farmer will move their army of alts back and forth depending on whose LP is higher in value, and then push it back and forth, which is a drag on the whole PvP motivation, in my opinion.
I agree.
It's interesting to think, I know that, you guys are talking, that you sort of play a role-playing group on TV kind of thing, or you try to be as close as you can to it. But I've read some stories, and I guess this is probably around Pi and some of the other groups, but do you, do you kind of plan out, like, what your thoughts are and what the story is going to be, with those actions? So like in Nullsec, right, like it's like narrative, right, and it's like what kind of crazy story or whatever can we say, and then that'll kind of give us a justification or a motivation to do something in particular. But I've seen, like, for a lot of the RP or the faction warfare groups, it's a lot more kind of sticking towards Eve, right? So do you guys think along those terms, or does it even come up, or do you guys, kind of discuss that amongst yourselves, or how does that work?
Well, so we take. I wouldn't say that we base everything on the Eve lore. Far from it, but we use this as a additional motivation, if you want. And back in the day when Burn Huola happened, we had the circumstances that most of the Minmatar militia left faction warfare, and those that stayed were basically identifying themselves more or less with the militia. So they were more or less our peer, if you want to put it that way. So, and from there we build it up. So that's why Ushra'Khan is one of the major players in Minmatar militia, is at least to some regard RP related. And we, for example, there was this event happening in Kaha and HiSec where we went and we tried to help this freighter get to the station, and where we blew up this DED character that was sent from CCP actually to the system. Things like that. That is our role playing. So the faction warfare part isn't too much influenced by that, other than we fight for our faction basically, and we try to stick to the ships that we use. We basically role play with our guns in faction warfare.
Yeah, I think D&G takes quite a different approach to UK. We're more of a, you come into low sec and your nearers will take a pop at you. And most of our guys can't get into high sec due to being -10. So we don't take part in the RP things. It's not really something that appeals to us. We're just more of an ad hoc PvP kind of entity.
And it's always good if you can scream slaver scum or something like that at the enemy. That's always good.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people outside of faction warfare tend to think that all faction warfare groups are role players. I mean, I remember in the last AT tournament when Penn is out and Tempest were in there, every time they come on grid, they were announced as the role players. That's not really true. There's a lot of groups. Fed Up was not at all role player at all. We flew whatever doctrine was good. We didn't really care. I mean, we did some of it. We would always, obviously we wanted to kill the squids, the Kaldari, but
who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't? But yeah, we would fly any doctrine that worked. We weren't like locked into a Galente storyline at all. There's always elements of it, but the role playing isn't always the main driver behind a faction warfare group.
I have to say, especially when it comes to the ships, it's hard to stay in the Minmatar line. I mean, like Tristan explained, for the plexing doctrines, it's kind of a continuum. You go with the Minmatar frigates, then with the Thrashers, then with the Ruptures and whatnot. But when it gets bigger, you hit the point where the Minmatar ships aren't really up to many of the challenges. For example, when you look at the bigger fights, where now the Traglavian ships are dominating the field. And that's kind of the thing where we have to make compromises, I guess, if we want to be able to, with our smaller group, compete.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and kind of going back to like outside groups. One thing that we kind of do in Nullsec is, we invite our friends, right? Or we, bat phone for big timers. And, and then I know, Tristan, bat phoned, or got some assistance from some Nixes, defending their home system. Is that something, that you would like look for, but more on a regular basis rather than just for the home system? Or do you just want the dirty nullsecers to stay away from your nice clean fights kind of thing?
I think the expectation with a lot of fights in FAC War is that you're going to get third parties there. There are a lot of groups in the area who are interested, who have alts in your corp that you may not know about. They see your pings, they know that fights are happening, and they show up. So you're kind of preparing not only just to fight your opposing militia, but also any third party that may kind of arrive as well. So if you take the fights we had in Isbrabata, for example, we had a really good feeling that did he say jump were going to show up. They did, and the moment they arrived, CalSef made their appearance known and engaged them. So what we weren't expecting was Weekend Warriors also to show up in a Nightmare fleet and wreck us all. But you've got to kind of always be expecting it's not going to be a case in faction warfare of us versus the minis or us versus Galent. There's always going to be other parties that are interested. You have fights and you basically chum the waters.
And the bigger the fight. Sorry.
No, yeah, I was going to say the bigger the fight. Like if you're going to have a fight on a citadel outside of a Plex, then they're even more interested, right?
Yeah. And I mean, as soon as systems if there's a system where people actually fight for and the system goes up, then that means the kill in the system go up, and that means that neutrals are going to come there to find fights, and sooner or later, bigger pirate groups of the area will show up in proper doctrine. smash everything.
Sort of the last question that I wanted to ask you guys along this topic of bat phoning. When I was in faction warfare, there was one push with the Minmatar to take the Warzone back from Amarr, and us as Galente militia helped the Minmatar militia do that. So for some who don't know, the other mechanic is the Galente militia can fight on behalf and with the Minmatar faction, and Amarr can fight on behalf and with Kaldari. Right. So is there any of that interaction going on? Have you guys reached out to the other side of the war zone for your quote unquote allies to step in on any of this and help you, or is that not really a thing right now?
Well, we're getting the influence if we want it or not. I mean, the Kaldari hit tier 4, tier 5 a while ago, and we had a lot of Kaldaris in our systems because they couldn't Plex in their war zone as much. But we, as Minmatar, were holding most of the war zone at this time, and then they just plexed our systems up, so that the Amarians then just needed to bash the hub. But apart from the Gila fleets that Tristan calls in every weekend, I don't see much when it comes to actual faction warfare and calling in friends. But that is partly to the fact that there is little going on when it comes to big sieges or attacks on systems, right? I mean, you don't want to call in friends to then run plexes against farmers or just empty systems. That is not what they would come for. Or you maybe do that once and then they never show up again. So that's not happening right now, as far as I can tell.
Gotcha.
Yeah, something that I found really interesting, and you guys were kind of talking about this, in regards to Blackout, was you're finding, sort of like a recent uptick in new recruits from Nullsec. So, how would someone who maybe has never heard the show or whatever, but they know a little bit about faction warfare, but how would they find you guys? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many different faction warfare groups, and it's such a a wide array, right? Like, how would they find like the active groups, or like, do you guys recruit out of like the recruitment channels or from Discord, or where do you kind of find your people from?
Well, the easiest thing for anyone to do would be to join the in-game channel Dirt and Glitter, and then we'll.
That's how I got my alt in, yeah. Now, for us, I mean, we are running open militia fleets basically every night, or at least every second night. So, at least in the EU time zone, if you just join the TLF, which I would recommend if you want to try out faction warfare, just join TLF for the start, try to get a feeling, and then look for a group, because the group will help you a lot. I guess it's not different from Nullsec. You can't really do Nullsec alone, I would guess. I haven't tried it, but I would guess that's. So if you have a group that helps you, that explains stuff to you, that helps you with things, that provides you proper staging, that kind of takes you by the hand for a while and helps you to understand what is important and what is maybe not so important in the game.
Yeah, it's a good place. It's a really good place to cut your teeth on PvP, because Ron, I think you said at the beginning of the show that they tend to be very good at subcaps, and that's because their numbers are so low, right? Every pilot is more critical, right? So you're flying your assault frigate. You are not one of 200. You're one of 15, and your performance matters. So you wind up learning a lot more. You get attacked more. You learn how to fly more. So it's a great place to cut your teeth.
And you guys overheat everything more. Like,
overheat everything.
Every time we get a new faction warfare guy, it's like, how many fleets is he going to go on before he's already broken his guns and he's broken his like overheating everything? Like, oh, okay, well, there you go.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Just one thing, because it was pointed out to me. TLF is a Tribal Liberation Force. That's the NPC Amarr. Sorry, Minmatar.
Oof.
The one sort of problem, I think, and this is from an outsider, with faction warfare, that I think is, it's kind of difficult to get into, right? Like, you have to drop corp and you have to join a faction warfare corp. I wish there was some way that someone could kind of try it out like for 30 days or something, and maybe, I don't know, through some in-game mechanic or whatever, but they enlist for like 30 days and they don't have to drop corp, or maybe they get a fake corp or whatever for 30 days or something, to allow people to kind of test the waters more, right? Without having to, take the leap. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
My suggestion would be make an alpha if you're really interested. What do you guys think?
I think if you had a situation where guys, could just kind of dip their toes in and out, you're not going to really experience faction warfare properly. You're not going to get the experience of other guys who have been there for a long time, and you're definitely not going to integrate so well with the faction warfare communities. Your best bet is to join a corp who is already in, like a DNG.
Yeah, for example. No, but I mean, the idea with the alpha might work. I mean, you then join the corp with the alpha, and then you get the whole faction warfare experience, and not just the mechanics and the explosions, but what it feels like to be a militia, what the groups can offer you. I mean, I don't know what DNG offers except for beer, but that's something, I guess.
The important part about low sec groups is logistics, really, right? There's a whole half of the militia that's cut off from Jita, right? And that's not to be underestimated. That Gallente and Minmatar militia members, due to their standings to the Caldari Navy, can't go to Jita.
That's what neutral hauling alts are for.
Well, yes. So if you join a group and you experience that help, because that to me, I've seen deterred people from joining Gallente militia a lot, was because, man, I can't go to Jeddah. How do I get my ships? And then you join a group that has a good logistics wing, and it makes sense. So I think alpha is a great way to if you wanted to play around with it, make an alpha, train them up. Before you know it, you're flying frigates that are more than capable of being in fleet, and you can feel how the whole thing works.
A lot of the larger groups also have kind of staging Fortizars, seeded markets, that kind of stuff. So realistically, as a new player, if you can get into that social aspect of it, you're not going to be missing out on anything.
You have a market?
Yeah, did not tell you that.
So we can buy our ships in your Fortizar, you say?
Well, you can't, because you can't dock there, mate.
But what if my alt is already in DNG?
And your alt can buy some ships, and I'll make that good money.
Nice. So yeah, but the point is very important. That's true. The logistics and the fear of not being able to get what you wanted to get, that's not that big of an issue once you are actually in faction warfare. And I mean, we have regular runs with jump freighters and whatnot to the hubs where we offer to bring stuff for people that need it. We also have, we don't have a market on our own. We put the auction ships on contract, on alliance contract for proper prices. At least I hope. So the logistics is important, and it helps people to concentrate on the PvP stuff. And that's one thing that I think is very unique to faction warfare as well. At least for my group, that's true. I feel it's more casual. But back in the day, when we had all the big sieges, you would just log in, you would hop into a fleet, and there would be explosions right away. No need to fly 10 jumps or whatever. It would be right on your doorstep. These days, that changed a bit, but it's still true that for casual players that just want to lock in and have fun, at least from my own experience, LowSec is offering a lot. I don't say it's the best place, but I saw some of Nullsec, I saw some of the wormholes, but LowSec has convinced me that if I only have 2 hours of game time, I don't want to spend 1.5 hours looking for the fight. I want to have the fight after like 5 minutes, 10 minutes max. And that is where faction warfare and LowSec can shine. Especially if we would get a few more people into faction warfare and LowSec, then we would have obviously more fights because people tend to shoot each other.
Yeah, I think faction warfare gets sort of a bad rap. When like people like me try it, 3 or 4 years ago, and it was just people warping off, and no one ever wanted to fight, and that kind of memory, right, of how it was 3 or 4 years ago, kind of sticks with you, and you kind of tell your friends and that kind of thing. So I think it was interesting that the blackout mechanic is kind of getting a few more people in Nullsec, and I think keeping up the recruitment and that kind of stuff. I've faction warfare, some interesting people, but I will say, and I think Harkon, you were talking about when the guys saw the Nixes, they got a little gun shy. I can tell you, nothing scares Nixes more than like 30 dreads. That'll scare just about any super, or maybe 40, right around in there. It's like the magic number.
So I just need 40 dreads and pilots for them.
Yeah.
If there's any dread pilots out there that want to fly faction warfare, join Ushra'Khan, join militia.
I might know a couple people. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I really liked having you guys on the show, and I'm glad you're still carrying the faction warfare flag. I miss playing with you guys, and I think that faction warfare and Nullsec is just going through a swing now. Like we had an exodus of a lot of bitter vets and things, and now maybe Blackout's driving some fresh blood in there, or maybe there's gaps now that are being filled by new groups. I'm hoping you get on that upswing again and get that content you're looking for. But keep up what you're doing, and keep posted battle reports, and keep talking about the positive things that are going on in the game. Not so much what's always broken, but what is working. There's stuff that works.
All right, guys. So we are going to wrap up. So Tristan, do you have a shout out you want to give? There's a lot of people chatting, and I haven't read any of it. So I think you guys have some of your fans here. But do you have any shout outs?
Just like to shout out to all the guys in DNG, and Twitch chat is primary, by the way.
Harkon, do you have any shout outs for us? Oh, and both of you guys, could you do you have like your Discords or something you can put in Twitch chat for people to join if they're interested?
Yeah, can someone do that for Ushra'Khan? I just want to send a shout out to the Minmatar militia as a whole, I guess, Ushra'Khan and Smilewave specifically, and I was asked to give a shout out to Stein and Carbon 7. Join Carbon 7 Minmatar militia. That's it.
I don't even know what all those words are. I love it.
That's
it's great.
fine.
It's so exciting. It's just like, oh, and it's like, I'm like, oh, that is awesome. Silver, do you have any shout outs you want to give, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, to our guests, I know it's really late for you guys, so I really appreciate you coming on the show, and your organizations for keeping up the good fight. And even on the other side, shout out to Aderon Robotics, who's newly back into the war zone and recruiting and trying to fire things up on the other war zone. I like it, guys. Good work.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having
and
us.
always remember, that as a faction warfare, at least you're not a wormholer, right? So there's that. All right, so that'll end it for us, and we will see you on Sunday. Very exciting. Have a great night, guys.
Night, everyone.
Okay, you guys are